$1.5 a day around the world. It's extreme poverty. And one of the scholars, he was saying that those people who are prosperous in the rich nations, they have to they also have to cut down, their consumption. If everyone is merely trying to consume as much as possible and have greed to acquire as much wealth as possible, then these type of inequalities continue. And the only way to reduce these inequalities and for poor people to also have some, come out of their poverty, the rich people have to do without to some extent. Yeah? Not saying everyone has to become equal, but people have to not, greed can't be the bottom line. To maximize your acquisition of wealth can't be the bottom line. It also has to be giving out as well. So that's one of the things that Islam, the Sharia, safeguards, wealth being distributed through zakat and sadaqah. So those who have more pay out more. So zakat is fixed, isn't it? It's 2.5%. So the more savings you have, the more you'll end up giving in proportion. And the other way that Islam, the Sharia, safeguards that wealth is distributed is through the inheritance laws, which are very specific in the Quran. It's one of the few instances where the Quran actually gives details of the rulings. So the Quran in much detail gives exactly how many people get what portions. And this is obligatory for someone to divide according to Sharia. You don't have an option. So therefore wealth is distributed. A father or a mother who's wealthy, when they die, they can't leave all of their wealth to one person, or two people. It has to be distributed according to Sharia. So this is zuhud. Zuhud is a key of understanding that our life as human beings is ultimately linked to the akhirah. So therefore, the more we reflect upon that and the more that becomes a reality for us, the less inclined we are towards accumulating endless amounts of worldly excess. So Imam al-Ghazali says, now that we've talked about zuhud, let's discuss some of the ways to achieve that state of being. What is the way that we can achieve the state of being in a state of zuhud? وجملة الأمر أنك إذا نظرت بعقلك أيها الرجل فعلمت أن الدنيا لا بقاء لها. So he says, in summary, if you consider with your intellect and your intelligence, and you think about this, you will realize that this world has no permanence. وأن نفعها لا يفي بضرها وتبعاتها من كد البدن وشغل القلب في الدنيا والعذاب الأليم والحساب الطويل في الآخرة. And any sort of pleasure or benefit you get in from the dunya is not enough to balance out the harm that comes from it. In all of these different types of harm, you're putting your body through all sorts of stress to acquire the worldly things. You're putting your mind and your heart is distracted towards acquiring these worldly things. So you're using up all of your physical and mental energy within the world to acquire the world. And also it will lead to possibly punishment and reckoning on the Day of Judgment with all of that wealth that you acquired. Is it worth it that you're going to have this temporary pleasure which is going to then finish? Okay? So that's what he's saying. So we have people of intelligence, we have to use our brains. زهدت في فضولها. Once you realize this, you inevitably, if you're a person of intelligence, have to then start becoming moderate in your acquisition of the worldly goods. فَلَا تَأْخُذُوا مِنْهَا إِلَّا مَا لَا بُدَّ لَكَ مِنْهُ فِي عِبَادَةِ رَبِّكَ وَتَدَعَ التَّنَعُمَ وَتَلَذُّذِ إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. And once you come to this realization, you will not try to acquire more and more worldly pleasures and worldly goods. You will take what you need to serve and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will leave your pleasures for the next world, which you know will be an everlasting abode. دار النعيم المقيم في جوار رب العالمين الملك القادر الغني الكريم. You will leave your pleasures for that abode which is in the presence of the one who is the Lord of all creation, the King, the powerful, the absolute and the generous. وعلمت أن الخلق لا وفاء لهم وأن مؤنتهم أكثر من معونتهم فيما يعنيك وتركت مخالطتهم. And further, upon reflecting further on all of the things that we've discussed through the last few classes, you will realize that the company of people, or people in general, they are not faithful to you. The tribulation that comes from them is greater than any type of help that you get from them. So then you will start avoiding their company, specifically bad company or company of time wasters, let's put it that way. As for the company of people who are righteous or more righteous or more knowledgeable than ourselves, that company is to be sought after. إلا فيما لا بد لك منه تنقطع بخيرهم وتجتنب ضرهم تنتفع بخيرهم وتجتنب ضرهم وتجعل صحبتك تنتفع بخيرهم وتجتنب ضرهم وتجعل صحبتك لمن لا تخسر في صحبته ولا تندم على خدمته. So he says you will then leave off the company of such people. You will just take what is good and you will avoid what is harmful from them. And you will make your companionship the one who, in whose companionship you will never find loss. And you will serve the one that you will never regret serving. وَأُنْسُكَ بِكِتَابِهِ وَمُلَازَمَتِكَ إِيَّاهُ. And your intimacy will be in his book. So he's referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one that if you keep his company, you will never be in loss. Keeping the company of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is by remembering him and by reciting his book. As it says in the Sahih, أَنَا جَلِيسُ مَنْ ذَكَرَنِي. I am the companion of the one who remembers me. فَيَكُونْ لَكَ بِكُلِّ حَالٍ وَتَرَى مِنْهُ. So he will be with you in every state. If you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every state, then he will be with you in every state. The Prophet ﷺ said in the Sahih, if you are with Allah in ease, in times of ease, he will be with you in times of hardship. وَتَرَى مِنْهُ كُلَّ جَمِيلٍ وَإِفْضَالٍ. And you will see all types of beauty and generosity from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَتَجِدُهُ عِنْدَ كُلِّ نَائِبَةٍ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. And whenever you need him, he will be there for you in the dunya and the akhirah. كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام احفظ الله تجده حيث اتجهت. As he said in one narration from the Prophet ﷺ, be careful of your duties and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will find Him wherever you turn. وعلمت أن الشيطان خبيث قد تجرد لمعاداتك. You will also come to know that the shaitan is an evil being who his sole concern is enmity towards you. His sole concern. فاستعذت بربك القادر القاهر من هذا الكلب اللعين. So you will seek refuge with your Lord, the one who is powerful and the one who controls all creatures. You will seek refuge with Him from this accursed dog. ولا تغفل عن مكايده ومصايده. You will not be heedless from the traps and snares of shaitan. فَتَطْرُدَهُ بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. You will repel the shaitan with remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because whenever you remember Allah, shaitan cannot whisper. وَلَا تَعْبَأً بِذَلِكَ. You will not be concerned with him. You don't get concerned with the shaitan, you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do remembrance of Allah. فَإِنَّهُ يَسِيرٌ إِذَا ظَهَرَتْ مِنْكَ عَزِيمَةُ الرِّجَالِ. فإنه كما قال تعالى إنه ليس له سلطان على الذين آمنوا وعلى ربهم يتوكلون. This shaitan, despite being such a evil and vile creature with all of these traps and tricks, he's very easy to overcome him. As long as you have the azimatul rijal, as long as you are able to stand up like a man. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ لَهُ سُلْطَانٌ. This shaitan, he has got no power over those who believe and trust in their Lord. He has no power over those who believe and trust in their Lord. وَلَقَدْ صَدَقَ أَبُو حَازِمْ فِيمَا قَالَ مَا الدُّنْيَا وَمَا إِبْلِيسِ. He said, Abu Hazim was correct when he said, what is the dunya and what is Iblis? أما الدنيا فما مضى فحلم وما بقي فأماني. Said, as for the dunya, whatever has gone past of it, it is just a dream, and whatever remains is just vain hopes. This is a very profound statement, about the dunya. And really, because these people, the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they see with such an eye of reality. They see with such an eye of spiritual insight. That's why in one saying it says, "As-Sufi ibnu waqti." The Sufi is the son of his time. And what this has got different meanings actually. People have given different interpretation, but one of them is the Sufi is the one who he's the person of the present. He's the person of the present. And this is actually the state of the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very clearly we get this from the Sunnah. So when someone goes into that state, he can never be depressed and he can never be anxious. Because depression is always about the past, things that have happened. And this person can never be depressed about the past because he says, قَدَرَ اللَّهُ مَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. As the Prophet ﷺ taught, when something happens, just say, قَدَرَ اللَّهُ مَا شَاءَ فَعَلَ. Allah decreed and that's what He wanted. You don't say low. Don't open the doors of if. If I had done this, or if we had done this, then this wouldn't have happened and that wouldn't. That's actually forbidden in the hadith. Yeah? Why? Because we are people who believe in qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ said, don't say low, because that opens the door of shaitan. Shaitan will come into us from that angle to make us depressed and despairing from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the deep, deep understanding of the state of being in this world. And there's no anxiety about the future because the person says, Atawakkal ala Allah. I trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the past is in the hand. Past was qadar Allah and the future is whatever Allah wills. How can the person be depressed or anxious? So that's why the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are in the present. The past is something that Allah decreed and it's gone. Like He said, فَمَا مَضَى فَحُلِمْ. Whatever has passed is like a dream. It's never going to come back. There's nothing of the past, except what we have in our heads, in our memories. It's quite a strange and profound thing if you think about it. All of your life that's passed, it's nothing. Nowadays we have obviously video cameras and things like that, so you can capture it and replay. But that's it's no different to your memories, that were in your head. Now you can actually capture on a video. Like in the past, we used to believe that the malaika capture everything, and people probably thought, how can that be possible? But now we can do it ourselves on video cameras and things. And وَمَا بَقِيَ فَأَمَانِي. What is going to come in the future is all vain hopes. We could die now, could die in the next moment. So you see the true people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are in the present. They're not going to be talking about 5 or 10 years what they're going to do. And they're not going to be talking about what they were doing 5 or 10 years ago. They're going to be talking about what's happening now. What are we doing now? How are we preparing ourselves for the akhirah now? وَأَمَّا الشَّيْطَانِ فَوَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ أُوتِيَ فَمَا نَفَعَ وَلَقَدْ أُوصِيَ فَمَا ضَرَّ. He said, as for shaitan, what's shaitan? When he is obeyed, he can't benefit you. And when he's disobeyed, he can't harm you. There's those people who actually obey shaitan and worship him. But he has no benefit for them. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, call upon those idols that you worship. Call upon those asnam, those idols. They're not going to benefit you in any way. So even those who follow shaitan and worship idols and all these things, is bringing no benefit to them. And for those who disobey him, he can't harm them. Like it said in the ayah before, those who are true believers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has got no power over them. So he said, what is shaitan? I was when I went for Umrah a couple of months ago, started talking to this taxi driver who was taking us from Makkah to Medina. Myself and Brother Jawad was with me. And it was quite good, it was funny, because he was a Bedouin. Well, actually he wasn't a Bedouin, but he was one of those, he was actually originally from Medina itself. He's one of the people of Medina, his family's from Medina itself. So a very nice man, mashallah. And we were telling him about, the Britain and all that. And they have this very wonderful picture of the West. Because their only exposure to the West is through Hollywood or TV. So they see a very glossy, nice image of what life is like in the West. So we're talking about Hurriya, there's freedom, Muslims, mashallah, we got masjids there, we pray Jumu'ah. And he was saying, mashallah, Hurriya, freedom and all that. Then I start telling him about some other type of things that go on. And I was telling him there's people that actually worship Satan, Shaitan, He was shocked. I said to him, I was trying to think, how can you translate to, Satanists and all these guys. So I say, hum shaitaniyun. Shaitaniyun. He was like, I think he just went over his head. He couldn't even comprehend it, you know. It was just too wild and out there for him. Probably thought I was just joking or something. Well, literally, you have people now, you know, Satanists. There's a lot of literature as well about satanic rituals and things like that. I mean, there's quite a few. There was a book written by a psychologist, female psychologist in Britain. I can't remember her name now. And she had been seeing many patients, you know, middle class, Middle England patients, and many of her colleagues as well. She wrote in that book. So many people, you know, have told us that all these satanic rituals that are going on in Middle England, you know, these middle class, upper middle class, respectable towns and places like that. Obviously, white British, I'm talking about. You know, she's saying there's all these satanic rituals going on that people don't know about, very secretive. Has anyone heard about these things? You come across these?
Not first
Amongst
time.
the white British. Have you heard about it?
Not first time.
Yeah, I mean, people can read about it if you want. But, okay. وأما الشيطان فوالله وعلمت جهالة هذه النفس وجماحها إلى ما يضرها. And you also then come to realize the ignorance of your own nafs, of your own ego, and its rebelliousness and unruliness, and that it always wants to do things that are harmful and will actually destroy it. فَنَظَرْتَ إِلَيْهَا رَحْمَةً لَهَا نَظْرَ الْعُقَلَاءِ وَالْعُلَمَاءِ. So you then turn to your own ego and your own nafs with the deep insight of someone of intelligence and knowledge. الَّذِينَ يَنْظُرُونَ فِي الْعَوَاقِبِ. People of intelligence and knowledge, they look at the outcomes of things, not at immediate pleasures. لَا نَظْرَ الْجُهَالِ وَالصِّبْيَانِ الَّذِينَ يَنْظُرُونَ فِي الْحَقِّ. You don't consider with the consideration of ignorant people and children who always want immediate pleasures. Yeah. You look at what will be the outcomes of my actions. You know, if I want to run after this pleasure or that pleasure, where's that going to be the outcome of it? وَلَا يَفْتِنُونَ لِغَائِلَةِ الْأَذَى. ويفرون من مرارة الدواء وألجمتها بلجام التقوى. Children and ignorant people who are unable to see the harms from certain things that they're doing. And children and ignorant people who run away from medicine because it's bitter. But it's good for you, but it's bitter. But you give a child a medicine, you tell him, look, this is good for you, this is good for you, it will make you better. The child will still refuse to take the medicine. Because children live in the immediate present. Yes, but the younger they are, the more difficult it is to give any type of, you know, if you tell a small child, you know, if you do this, you won't be able to, you'll get a punishment tomorrow, they'll still do it. Because tomorrow for them is like, don't worry about tomorrow. I'm just worried about now. You have to give, that's why they say, you know, if you are going to punish the child, punish straight away, immediately. For younger kids we're talking about now. So you harness in your nafs with the harness of taqwa. بأن تمنعها عما لا تحتاج إليه بالحقيقة من فضول وكلام وظاهر وتلبس بخصلة فاسدة. من طول عمل أو عجل أو حسد مسلم. So you rein in your nafs with taqwa by preventing it from anything that it doesn't really need in terms of excess worldly pleasure, excessive speech, excessive gazing at things that are unnecessary, excessive ornamentation in clothing, etc. And you prevent it from having these corrupting features, such as having long hopes in the world, being hasty in doing things, having envy towards another Muslim, or تكبر في غير موضع, or to have arrogance in a place that's not correct. Why he said that? Because there's certain places where arrogance is permissible or even recommended. This is very seldom the case, but can be. For example, in front of an enemy in battle, it's recommended for a Muslim to display arrogance, but not to be arrogant inside, but to display, in other words, not to look all humble in front of when you're facing an enemy. And the other place actually in the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ mentioned to show arrogance in front of an arrogant person is also ibadah. So this is where, once again, it's a showing of arrogance, but not a feeling of arrogance in the heart. And this is done merely where you have people who are, probably need to be put more in their place. أو أقل بمحض شهوة وشره, or to indulge in excessive eating and drinking. تعطيها ما ليس لها منه بد ولا تخاف منه ضررا. إذ لا ضرورة إلى الفضول. So you start treating your nafs with what it requires for worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you don't need to give it too much excessive pleasures of worldly things, worldly consumptions. وقد سمع الله تعالى الأمر على وقد وسع الله تعالى الأمر على عباده برحمته وأغناهم عن جميع ما يضرهم في أمر دينهم فأي حاجة إلى ذلك. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given his slaves plenty, and he has given them sufficiency, and he has made them enriched, so they don't have to indulge in those things that will harm them in their deen. Why do we have to do things that they're going to go, excessive, so that we start harming ourselves in our deen? فإن الأمر كما قال بعض الصالحين إن التقوى أهون شيء إذا رابني أمر تركته. One of the righteous people, he said, taqwa is actually is an easy thing. If I had any doubt in anything, I left it. That's taqwa. If I felt doubt in something, I left it. He makes it sound easy. But if we could do that, then we would be people of taqwa. Anything doubtful, just leave it. فإن النفس تستجيل فتتعود ما عودتها وإنها لكما قال القائل. The nafs is such a beast that it becomes accustomed to whatever you accustom it to. As one of the poets said, فالنفس راغبة إذا رغبتها فإذا ترد إلى قليل تقنع. Anyone have that one line? Translation?
The self becomes inclined to that thing to which you induce it, and it becomes contented with only a little if you train it on this line.
وقال آخر هي النفس ما عودتها تتعود. And another one said, this is the nafs, whatever you accustom it to, it becomes accustomed. وَيُرْوَهِيَ النَّفْسُ مَا حَمَلْتَهَا تَتَحَمَّلْ. This nafs, in other words, the nafs is something that can be trained to become habituated. So if someone is in the habit of eating a certain amount of food, they can train their nafs to eat half of that amount. They gradually train it, it will become habituated. If someone's in the habit of sleeping excessively, they can train the nafs so that they sleep less. If someone's not used to waking up for Fajr, if he starts doing that regularly, then his nafs will become used to it. So the nafs is like that, it can become trained and accustomed. Until then, waking up for Fajr becomes easy for the person. And the ulama, they often said 40 days is the training period that the nafs requires, 40 days. If you do anything for 40 days consecutively, then the nafs will become trained to that thing. So if someone is able to get themselves up for Fajr for 40 days, then it will become easier for them. وقال آخر صبرت عن اللذات حتى تولت وألزمت نفسي صبرها فاستمرت وما النفس إلا حيث يجعلها الفتى فإن أطعمت تاقت وإلا تسنت. What translation of that, those two lines?
Is it the poem?
Yes, 2 lines, this one.
It's quite long, the translation given. I made myself refrain from lust to such an extent that those lusts disappeared. I imposed patience on the self till it became used to it. The self follows man's program. If you give it sufficient food to eat, it is drowned in lust. If it is given less food, it remains under control.
فإذا علمت الذي وصفناه وعملت به كنت من الزاهدين في الدنيا والراغبين في الآخرة. If you understand what we have said, and you act upon this, you will be of those people who are moderate in the dunya, and those who are seeking the hereafter. وَعَلَمْ أَنَّ مَنْ سُمِّيَ بِإِسْمِ زَاهِدٍ فَلَقَدْ سُمِّيَ بِأَلْفِ إِسْمٍ مَمْدُوحٍ. And know that the one who is given this rank of Zahid, someone who has become a Zahid, he is someone who has got many praiseworthy characteristics. وَكُنْتَ مِنَ الْمُنْفَرِدِينَ الْمُنْقَطِعِينَ إِلَى اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ. This person who has become a Zahid, he is someone who is now munfarid, he is someone who is now munqati', he is someone who is now devoting himself to coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. الَّذِينَ هُمْ أَهْلُ الْأُنْسِ. He will now then become the person of uns, the person who has intimacy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Intimacy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a rank of Iman. It's a state of Iman. It is connected to what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, tasting the sweetness of ibadah, halawatul iman, or the sweetness of Iman. Because having the intimacy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a taste of the sweetness of Iman. Yeah? This state of having intimacy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not something that can be explained in words or books, but only something that can be experienced. It's only something that can be experienced, and those who experience it can know it. It's like Imam al-Ghazali says, the taste of honey. You can't describe the taste of honey to someone apart from just saying to them it's sweet or something of that nature. It's impossible to describe tastes of different fruits, of different type of tastes. So it's called uns, but you can't know what is uns unless you actually taste and the intimacy. فَتَكُونُ كَمَا قَالَ الْقَائِلِ. Mention some more poetry if you have that one.
Some people are engaged in their worldly affairs, while there are some people who have spared themselves for the worship and service of their Lord in retirement. Allah has appointed them at the door of His pleasure and made them independent of all the creation. They are people whose legs stand at night in prayer, and the Lord Guardian looks after them. So there are glad tidings for them that exalted Allah has favoured them with His honours.
So where there?
What's tahiyya here? I mean,
I've got a different topic.
Oh.
So whereabouts?
the last line, second part.
وَطُوبَى لَهُمْ ثُمَّ طُوبَى لَهُمْ
No, the one after that.
إِذَا بِالتَّحِيَّةِ. There?
What does that mean? Tahiyya.
The very last one?
Yeah.
Tahiyya is greeting, isn't it?
Yeah, no, but you translate it differently, didn't
You seem to have got a whole different...
No, that line is the same, isn't it?
you?
Yeah.
First two lines were the same, but then it just went completely different. So what happened to...
No, we got the same one as him.
Which one is it? What's your problem? Is it إذا ذكروا بالذي أسلفوا?
No.
نعم.
Yeah.
تشاغل قوم بدنياهم وقوم تخلوا لمولاهم فألزمهم باب مرضاته وعن سائر الخلق أغناهم يصفون بالليل أقدامهم وعين المهيمن ترعاهم فطوبى لهم ثم طوبى لهم إذا بالتحية حياهم.
Oh yeah, I've got the same, but I've got one line extra.
Yeah. At the beginning or?
In the middle.
Oh.
After أغناهم إذا ذكروا بالذي أسلفوا أذاب القلوب وأبكاهم.
Sorry, can you? إذا ذكروا.
إذا ذكروا
ذكروا.
بالذي أسلفوا أذاب القلوب وأبكاهم. And then I've got saying فما يعرفون سوى حبه. You don't have that, do you? فما يعرفون سوى حبه.
No.
The next line فما يعرفون سوى حبه فوالوا الإله فوالاهم. And then I've got يصفون بالليل أقدامهم وعين المهيمن ترعاهم. So how did you translate the very last line then?
So there are glad tidings for them that exalted Allah has favoured them with His honours.
Allah has favoured them with His honours. Allah, unless there's different meaning for it, could be. But I would have thought it's بِالتَّحِيَّةِ حَيَّاهُمْ.
Life.
Greeted them.
And give them life. Hayya.
Hayya can also be from tahiyya, to actually, to give greetings. It could be, yeah, Allah. It could be to give life as well.
You like to say hayyak Allah.
وكنت من المجاهدين في الله الخواص من عباد الله الذين قال فيهم سبحانه إن عبادي ليس لك عليهم سلطان. So you will become one of those who strive in the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will become one of the elite of the worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Regarding whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إن عبادي ليس لك عليهم سلطان. As for my slaves, you have no power over them, meaning shaitan. وكنت من المتقين, you will become people of taqwa. الذين لهم سعادة الدارين, those who have got the happiness of both abodes, this abode and the next. But the people of taqwa, it's not only the akhirah that they achieve, it's also happiness in this world. That's the beauty of it in reality. The people who chase after this world, they never actually get happiness of this world. As the Prophet said, the son of Adam, he continues to try to get more and more, but his mouth will never be filled except with the dust of his grave. His mouth will never be filled except with the dust of his grave. Because the nature of that acquiring of wealth and dunya is you always want more and more. If the son of Adam was given a mountain of gold, he would want another one. So it doesn't bring tu'ma'nina. Acquisition of wealth doesn't bring tranquility to the hearts. You know people who have money. You can go and meet big business people or big wealthy people and see if they are people who have tranquility or not. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. By remembering Allah, hearts find peace and tranquility. So the beauty of it is, the people who run after the dunya, they still don't find their happiness and tranquility. The people who seek the akhirah and they seek after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they find their tranquility in this life and the next. إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. The people, the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it says in the Quran, لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. They have no fear and they have no grief. وَصِرْتَ حِينَئِذٍ أَفْضَلَ مِنْ كَثِيرٍ مِنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ. And you will become at that time better than many of the most greatest angels. إِذْ لَيْسَتْ لَهُمْ شَهْوَةٌ تَدْعُو إِلَىٰ قَبِيحٍ وَنَفْسٌ خَبِيثَةٌ. Because the angels, they don't have these desires and this nafs that they have to battle against. So that's why the human being has been given a rank above the malaika. If the human being realizes his full potential, he becomes better than the malaika. He becomes better than the malaika. Why? Because they don't have to fight against their nafs and their desires. Okay? But the human being does. That's why actually the most rewardable action is the fard, not the nafal. Because nafal we do from our own desire. Yeah? If you didn't have that desire, you won't do nafal. You understand? Fard you do against your desires. You do it simply because Allah has made it obligatory. Yeah? So you don't want to do that action at that time. You don't want to give that zakat. You don't want to go for hajj. But you're forced to. You're doing it against your desires, against your nafs. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded. That's why there's the most reward attached to the fard. Because that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to see. That's what He loves to see from the slaves. Yeah? That you're making a sacrifice. You're going against your desires. If you're doing lots of nafal, dhikr, you're enjoying it, yes, you will be getting plenty of reward as well, but it's not the same as doing something against your nafs. That's why for many people, actually, dhikr can actually become following their nafs. Yeah? And that's what people don't realize. Worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have to do what is required of you by Allah, not what you want to do. Yeah? There are times when a person may go off and go in the path of Allah and do dhikr and stay by himself in masjids and do i'tikaf and leave his family, and that's going against his nafs. Right? It's difficult for him to leave all of his family and his pleasures and everything and go to masjids and do dhikr. So he may get huge reward, but then if that person now becomes doing that regularly, he might actually then start enjoying that and start finding pleasure in that. Yeah? Going out on Jamaat or going out for 3 days or 10 days and you're in masjids, you start actually enjoying that. And it may no longer be what is required of you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maybe there are other more pressing priorities. Yeah? Well, there's more important things you're doing. So we have to be very careful. Like I said last time, sometimes the Sharia, sometimes what is more pleasing to Allah may coincide with actually what you desire to do. But often it doesn't. Usually it doesn't, because that's part of the nature of the test to see if we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Sahaba, when it was a time to raise the sword, they raised the sword. They didn't then say, oh, actually it's better for us to just sit at home and do dhikr and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When it was time to raise the sword, they raised the sword. كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ. Fighting is now prescribed for you, even though it's detestable to you. Even though it's something that goes against your desires. Because actually the Sahaba, they were in Medina. They now had their own place where they were safe from the Quraysh. and they were able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there were people who used to love worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not like us. Yeah, for them, when they go into prayer, they are in a state of ecstasy. As the Prophet ﷺ said, the coolness of my eyes in the prayer. So they were happy people. You know, they were able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do their prayer, do their dhikr. But then, kutiba alaykum al-qital, now fighting is prescribed for you. Yeah? Now it's time to break that. You've become accustomed to in Medina. For the first year in Medina, there was no fighting, you know. It was in the second year that the Battle of Badr took place. But, you know, actually, I mean, fighting was prescribed before Badr. But that was the first major battle. Yeah? So, kutiba alaykum al-qital wa huwa kurhun lakum, even though it's now going against your desires. So the Sahaba, they raised the sword when it was time to raise the sword. Later on, when the Muslims start fighting amongst themselves, many of the great Sahaba, they broke the swords. And they went back to their houses. And they start worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they started teaching the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah, and they refused to fight. So that's the thing, you see, they knew there's a certain time to do a certain thing, and there's a certain time when something else is required. So we do what is required of us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not what our nafs wants to do. وكنت قد خلفت هذه العقبة الطويلة الشديدة وراءك وسبقت العوائق كلها إلى مقصودك ولا يهولنك فإنه مع الاستعانة بالله والاعتصام به لهين. So then, coming to the end of this chapter now, Imam al-Ghazali says, so now you have attained this rank of zuhud. You have left behind this very difficult and treacherous obstacle. Meaning these obstacles he's been talking about, the four obstacles, yeah? The dunya, the nafs, the shaitan, and the dunya, nafs, shaitan, and the creation. So you've gone beyond that now. You've left that behind you. You have put these obstacles down and got your intention firmly in mind where you're trying to get to. And this is no longer difficult for you. Those four obstacles are no longer difficult for you like they used to be. Because if you have true faith and you ask Allah's help, then these obstacles can become very easy if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us tawfiq. Even though they're the most difficult, they're easy if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides us. نسأل الله تعالى وهو خير مسؤول أن يمدك وإيانا بحسن توفيقه وعزته وعونه وتيسيره. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He's the best of those who are asked, that He strengthens and helps us and yourselves with His tawfiq and His help and His facilitation. فإنه هو الكافي لكل مهم والاستعانة به في كل معضل. He is the one who is sufficient for all important matters, and His help is sought from all difficulties. فبيده الخلق والأمر. In His hand is all of creation and all of the affair. وهو على كل شيء قدير. He has got complete power over all things. فهذا ما أردنا ذكره في هذا الباب. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. So Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah finishes by saying, this is what we have wished to mention in this chapter. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no power except through Him. So there finishes the chapter of the four obstacles. The four obstacles. This was the nafs, the dunya, the creation, and the shaitan. Yeah, so quite a long chapter. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq and become people who are able to get past these obstacles. Do you have time on that?
10-2.
Technical. Any questions before we move on the whole chapter? If there's anything. Any questions? Any comments?
The other thing you mentioned about arrogance, how does it work in terms of, you said, like, for an arrogant person?
Show arrogant for an arrogant person.
Yeah.
I think it just like I said, it's not in the heart, but it's to be, So, if someone is, showing arrogance towards you, those looking down upon you, and that person, say, an unrighteous person or a non-believer, then you should. So arrogance means looking down on you. So they try to make you feel small. So in other words, then you can show arrogance back. You can make them feel small.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the only thing is, like, especially for people who are around that scenario, that doesn't look like a very good quality to have. If you then respond, it looks like you're getting involved in the rat race or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think it's a case of because I think if people see you respond to something, I don't think they would think negatively of that. Because you're not the one who's, because they see you as if it's a workplace, let's say, or something, they know that you're not an arrogant person. You're always quite humble and everything. But then when someone is trying to be arrogant towards you, you then show arrogance back to them, they will see that as that's not your normal state, but you're responding to something. So you're not someone that can be sort of pushed over, So that is part of our deen, the al-mu'min al-qawi, ahabbu ila Allah. The strong believer is more beloved to Allah than the weak one, and both are beloved to Him. But there is an aspect of that, as some of the ulama say, the mu'min is not la yudhil, The believer should not be humiliated or put down, especially by non-believers. What does it say in the Quran describing the believers? Ashidda'u al-kuffar ruhama baynahum. It's a very important ayah. The believers, ashidda'u al-kuffar, they are strong against the disbelievers. Shadid, ruhama baynahum, very merciful amongst each other. That's why I said if you see the arrogance from an unrighteous person or from a disbeliever, if it's a mu'min, a pious person, but for whatever reason he maybe was having a bad day or whatever, then you don't have to be arrogant back to that person. Ruhama'u baynahum, they're merciful between each other. So many Muslims nowadays they do the opposite of that. Ruhama, they're merciful towards the disbelievers and severe amongst the believers. No, you're going the opposite of what the Quran says, describing the believers. Does that make sense? So now going on to the next chapter. Al-Aqabatu Rabi'ah. So this is now, remember we said how many stages were there? 7, isn't it? If I remember correctly. If you go right back to when we started the book, there were 7 stages, right? What was the first stage, anyone remember? We did? Knowledge, yeah? The first stage was to get knowledge. Second stage? Tawbah, good. Third stage is the one we just done.
I'm cheating.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, that's good. It shows Fatana at least, intelligence there to quickly do that. So third stage was the one we've just covered, which is the 4 obstacles. So the first stage was knowledge. You can't do anything without knowledge. If you don't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't know that you have to obey Him, you're not going to go on anywhere. This is why the first priority of Muslims in the age we live in now is to have institutions of sacred knowledge. Without knowledge, the deen will, within one generation, will disappear. If there's no one to teach the next generation the knowledge of this deen, how will it know? You know, if we don't teach these books of Imam al-Ghazali, how will anyone know that there's such a thing as zuhud, there's such a thing as purification? It will just simply disappear. So the first stage is knowledge. The second stage is tawbah. So that means to avoid anything that is a major haram. If we don't do that, there's no point trying to go through the other stages. And this is where you see people nowadays, ignorant Sufis, who say, oh, say Allah all the time, Allah, Allah, Allah all the time. They're still involved in all sorts of major sins. There's some of them that don't even pray or anything. And this is complete nonsense. There's no such thing as that. Of being in a state of major sins and still then claiming to be people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is impossible. So that's the first stage, tawbah. Then the third stage is these three obstacles that then will come. The love of the world, the combating against the desires of the nafs, wasting our time and energy with people who are bad company, and the shaitan who will try to deceive us, trap us, trick us. So now we come to the fourth aqaba, the fourth stage. And this is the aqabatul awarid. This is the stage of how do we say we're going to do this? There's four obstacles which we've done. Now these are the four. How do we translate this? Four. Anyone got? What's your translation on that?
Actually, use the word obstacles for this.
Obstacles again. Something that comes in your way. I mean, it can be an obstacle.
Barrier.
Four barriers, maybe we could say.
You can interrupt. For interrupting.
Interrupt, yeah, but that's not really. It's not really a noun, you know. That's okay. Anyone else got a different translation? No? What was the previous one called? A walking ball. A what?
Yeah.
Which one we called valleys, I think, wasn't it? Which one was that?
Interruption. Anyway, let's say four barriers, yeah? The four barriers to your progress now. العدد الأول الرزق ومطالبة نفسي بذلك. Now they're going to be the four barriers to our further spiritual progress. Now what these are, this is now we're talking higher level, right? We're now saying you've gone past the stage of tawbah. You've gone past the stage of combating the desires of your nafs and having lots of bad company and wasting your time and wasting your speech and wasting your... So now you're getting to the next level. You've gone past those. These are further barriers that will then come that we have to surpass. And these are also linked to what is known in the way of saluk as maqamat. Maqamat, you may have heard that term from the people of Tasawwuf. It's called maqamat. These are maqamat now. You've gone past the stage of tawbah and all of these ones, and so these are further stages we have to climb. So the first one is linked to tawakkul, maqam of tawakkul. We have to reach the maqam of trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says then the obstacle which is related to that is becoming concerned about where we're going to get our rizq, being concerned about our provision. So the more we have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the less we're going to be worried about our rizq. وإنما كفايته في التوكل فعليك بالتوكل على الله سبحانه في موضع الرزق والحاجة بكل حال وذلك لأمرين. So he says we have to have tawakkul. We have to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With regard to rizq, أحدهما لتتفرغ لعبادة ويتمشى لك من الخير حقه. In the Arabic, what do you have in the Arabic there?
ويتمشى لسان.
لتتفرغ للعبادة.
التفرغ للعبادة ويتمشى لك من الخير حقه.
Any translation for that one?
You may remain free to indulge fully in prayers and righteous acts.
Yeah, next bit.
A man who does not have his trust in Allah will be occupied with the search of sustenance both in body as well as in mind.
They don't translate that. Okay, so for two reasons. One, if you put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your rizq, your mind and everything will be clear for you to get into your worship. فإن من لم يكن متوكلا فلا بد من اشتغاله عن عبادة الله بسبب الحاجة والرزق والمصلحة. Someone who is not in a state of trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's no doubt that he will become preoccupied, his mind and his body, in other things, in trying to secure enough rizq for the future, so he won't be able to then go into the ibadah. إما ظاهرا وإما باطنا. Outwardly or inwardly, outwardly with his physical body or inwardly with his mind and his heart, is preoccupied. إما بطلب وكسب بالبدن كعامة الراغبين وإما بذكر وإرادة ووسوسة بالقلب كالمجتهدين المعلقين. So either physically he will be going around trying to get rizq instead of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, always concerned about trying to gather more and more rizq because he's worried about the future. Or he will be doing his worship but thinking and worried about that. So this is the state of those people, mujtahideen al-mu'allaqin. This is someone who is actually doing mujahada. He's trying to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but because he's not on that maqam of tawakkul, his mind is still attached to being worried about rizq and things like that. Yeah? So this is why this person now has to go to the next level, to the next maqam, is the maqam of tawakkul. والعبادة تحتاج إلى فراغ القلب والبدن ليحصل حقه. To become strong in one's worship, you have to have your heart and mind must be free of all these considerations. Yeah? So now don't forget, we're talking about those people who are going to the next level. Yeah? Imam al-Ghazali is not addressing the normal mu'min now, or the normal Muslim, or the person at the beginning who has to do tawbah. He's talking now to the person who has controlled his nafs, who has gone past that stage of having his desires controlling him. He's now controlling his desires. Yeah? He's gone past the stage of indulging himself in excessive talking and company and all these things. He's someone who's accustomed himself to seclusion and doing dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the person now he's taking to the next level. And he's saying now, you have to make sure that you don't have any attachment to acquiring rizq or any concern. You have to have complete tawakkul, complete trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَالْفَرَاغُ لَا يَكُونْ إِلَّا لِلْمُتَوَكِّلِينَ. Only the person who has complete trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can have complete freedom. His heart is completely free to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. بَلْ أَقُولُ كل من هو ضعيف القلب لا يكاد يطمئن قلبه إلا بشيء معلوم فلا يكاد يتم له أمر خطير في الدنيا وآخرة. So now Imam Ghazali says something interesting. He says, I say, anyone who is a weak character, weak heart, literally, his heart will never find rest except in something that he is accustomed to. So this person will never achieve greatness in this world or the next. He's actually making an interesting point here, Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah. Actually, I'll read on first and then we'll discuss. وكثيرا ما سمعت من شيخ أبي محمد يقول إنما الأمور تمشي في العالم لرجلين متوكل أو متهور. قلت وهذا كلام جامع في معناه. Does anyone have any footnotes in the Arabic? There's a Shaykh Abu Muhammad, you have? There's a Shaykh? No, because I think Dr. Faris, he normally has footnotes. He says, something I heard very much from my Shaykh Abu Muhammad, but he doesn't say, I don't know which Shaykh he's referring to. Whether it's Imam al-Haramain or not, but we can clarify later on. He says, something I heard very much from my Shaykh. He used to say that events in the world move on for two types of people. The one who has tawakkul, trust in Allah, and the one who is reckless. The one who is reckless. Mutahawwir. Mutahawwir is someone who just rushes into dangerous things without thinking.
This one translates as bold and courageous, which almost makes it sound good.
Yeah. It's linked to courage, but mutahawwir is more like reckless, I'd say, in Arabic. But obviously the person has to have some courage to rush into danger, if you know what I mean. But obviously bold and courageous is a good attribute, so it's more like being, reckless. So what Imam al-Ghazali rahimahullah is actually saying here is what nowadays people would call the movers and shakers of the world. People who do things, great things in the world. Right? Or people who achieve things, or people who do things. He said there's certain type of people who do things. This is what, remember I was talking about most human beings like sheep. Most people are like sheep. They just follow the crowd and just do. They don't take risks. They don't take risks. So what Imam al-Ghazali is saying, that's what most people do. People who make a difference in the world. The people who achieve things, the people who are willing to take a risk. Either the person is mutawakkil, he has got such a trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he's able to take a road where he knows that Allah will provide for him. Like the hijrah. People who make hijrah for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have to have a lot of trust. Because they're leaving everything, their wealth, their business, their homes, everything. They're going to a completely new place where they may have no work, no home, nothing. So they have to have complete trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people are not going to do that unless they have a lot of trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or you have the mutahawwir. This is the type of person, not doing it through trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He could even be a disbeliever. But this is someone who has, for whatever reason in their character, they have that type of thing which is linked to courage, but it's a thing they can take risks. They're able to do that, even though it may mean they will fall down. قلت وهذا كلام جامع ومعناه. So Imam al-Ghazali said this is an amazing statement, from my Shaykh. فإن المتهور يقصد الأمور على قوة عادة وجرأة قلب لا يلتفت إلى صارف يصرفه أو خاطر يضعفه فتجري له الأمور. So the mutahawwir, the reckless person, or the one who's willing to take risks, he's someone who is, due to this jur'ah, this type of bravery, he's able to do things, and he doesn't, when things are trying to stop him, he will disregard that thing and go for it. والمتوكل يقصد الأمور على قوة بصيرة وكمال يقين. So there's a difference between the two. Obviously the mutawakkil is the one, he is doing it through the strength of his spiritual state. Whereas the other one is doing it through the strength of his worldly knowledge or experience. وَكَمَالُ يَقِينٍ وَتُؤْمَنِينَ. The person who's mutawakkil is doing it through his absolute certainty and tranquility in the affairs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَتَمَامْ ثِقَةٍ بِضَمَانِهِ وَلَا يَتَفِتُ إِلَى إِنسَانٍ يُخَوِّفُ. The person who has trusted in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will not turn towards anyone who is warning him of the step he's going to take. You know, when this person decides to go hijrah and all of the community, they say to him, don't do it, you're not going to find anything, rizq for your family when you're there. All of these things, he will not turn to what they say. Yeah? وَقَالَ لَهُمُ النَّاسُ إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُمْ فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. When all of the people said to them, you know, everyone, all these armies are coming against you in Medina. So aren't you afraid? You know, all of the Arabs from Quraysh and all of their allies from all over Arabia are coming against you, Muslims in Medina, small group of Muslim Medina. You should be scared of them. فَخْشَوْهُمْ. You should be scared. Why are you just, in this state? Yeah, because this news was coming to Medina that all the Arab tribes, the largest army that had ever come together in Arabia, was coming together to attack the Muslims. فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا. This merely increased their iman. وَقَالُوا حَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. They said, Allah is sufficient for us as a guardian. So these are those people, you know, they were willing to take risks through their complete tawakkul. They were willing to go and fight against the Persians and the Romans through their complete tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They weren't mutahawwir, they were mutawakkil. Yeah? Because before Islam, they could have gone and attacked the Persians or the Romans, but they were just staying in Arabia. Yeah? O shaitan yuwaswisu. This person will not be distracted by people that are trying to warn him, and he will not be distracted by shaitan who is trying to trick him. فَيَفُوزَ بِمَقَاصِدِهِ وَيَظْفَرُ بِمُطَالَبِهِ. So this person ultimately will be successful in his objectives. وَأَمَّا الْخَلْقُ الضَّعِيفُ عَبَدًا فَيَقُولُ بَيْنَ تَوَكُّلْ وَتَرَدُّدْ وَالْفُتُورِ وَتَحَيُّرٍ كَالْحِمَارِ فِي مَعْلَفِهِ وَالدَّجَاجِ فِي قَفَصِهِ يَرْمُقُ مَا تَعَوَّدَ مِنْ صَاحِبِهِ لَا يَكَادُ يَنْفَقُّ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. As for the person who is weak, the weak-hearted person, yeah? So he's neither mutahawwir or mutawakkil. Yeah? This person is someone who is always going to be between tawakkul and taraddud. He sort of trusts in Allah, but he sort of has his doubts. He's unable to take that full tawakkul. Yeah? وَفُتُورُ وَتَحَيُّرٍ. He's between these different states, tawakkul, taraddud, being inactive, confused at times. He doesn't really know what's the best thing to do. Should I do the hijrah? You know, or better I should stay here. Should I do this? Should I do that? No. He's always going to never make that leap. He's not going to make that move. So he says he's like an animal who's just in his grazing field and he can't leave. Or like the chicken who's inside a cage and he's just being fed by his owner and he knows that food is going to come, so he just waits for that and he takes it. He can't break free from the cage. تقاعدت نفسه عن معالي الأمور. This person is not someone who is aspiring for high things. وانقطعت همته. He's a person who doesn't have high aspirations. فلا يكاد يقصد أمرا شريفا. He's not someone who is going to achieve great things or noble things or noble feats. Now this was the beauty of Islam and the beauty of the Prophet ﷺ, that he came to these people and he made them people who were achieving great things. Yeah? Came to normal people, Arabs who were just living in a very backward culture of just always having disputes amongst themselves and fighting and having this tribalistic type of society. And he made them people who had the highest aspirations and were able to achieve great things. And that's what Islam can always do. This teaching is always able to do. To take normal people and make them people of highest aspiration. فَإِنْ قَصَدَهُ فَلَا يَكَادُ يَظْفَرُ بِهِ وَلَا يَتِمُّ لَهُ ذَلِكَ. But this person who remains weak in his heart, he's unable to break into these high aspirations and go for these lofty goals. Yeah? And if he does try, he's always half-hearted. So he will, talk about it, maybe take a few steps, but then leave it. He will never be successful. Yeah? So many brothers, they used to call me and everything and say, I want to go study Islam. There's one particular brother I always remember for over several years he kept phoning me after every 6 months or after every year. And just saying the same thing, I want to go to Syria, I want to go somewhere to study Islam. But I've got my education to finish first, and then he was like, finish education, but I think I need to just establish my job a bit more. I don't know if I can take some years out later on. But I've just got married now as well, and I've just got a kid, so it's going to be difficult, but I really need to go, I have to go. Okay, so it's just going on and on and on, and he never went, And he used to ask my advice. He said, "Bro, what do you advise? Do you think I should go? Or do you think I should, because I've got my kid now, or do you think I should just wait a couple of years? Or do you think I should just finish my degree?" I after a while, I just said to him, "No, I think you should definitely go. You must go now." But he still, he didn't listen to my advice.
Stopped calling you then.
I think he stopped calling me after a while. So this is the thing, sometimes you have to take that step. ألا ترى أصحاب الهمم من أبناء الدنيا لم ينالوا مرتبة كبيرة ومنزلة خطيرة إلا بانقطاع قلوبهم عن أنفسهم وأموالهم وأهليهم. Imam al-Ghazali is saying, look at, for example, even the people of the dunya, the people who are into the worldly success. Look at people of worldly success. Just to give an example, we want to have other worldly success. But look at the people who have worldly success, even they have to go through so much sacrifice. And they have to make these leaps of, in their case, not of trust, but of recklessness. So he says, look at these people who have got high stations in the dunya, in the worldly sense. They never got to those places without having to cut themselves off from their desires and from their families and so on. They had to make their sacrifices for the worldly success. Yeah? They had to suppress their desires for a time. They had to do some sort of struggle to get to the states they're in. Like these days you have entrepreneurs and people who make millions and all that. The hard work they have to put in, the sacrifices they have to put in and so on. أما الملوك فيباشرون الحروب ويكافحون الأعداء. These people who become kings and sultans and leaders, they have to go through wars and fight their enemies. إما هلكا وإما ملكا حتى تحصل لهم مرتبة الملك وعقد الولاية, to attain to that state of being the leader or the sultan or the king. They have to go through a process of battle, fights, wars, etc. They didn't just get it from nowhere. وقيل إن معاوية رضي الله عنه لما نظر إلى العسكرين يوم صفين قال من أراد خطيرا خاطر بعزيمته. It's narrated from Sayyidina Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. As you know, he was the leader of one faction of Muslims that was fighting against Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu in the famous battle of Siffin. He said that when Sayyidina Muawiyah, he saw the two armies on that day, he said, Man arada khatiran khatara bi'azimati, the one who wants something big or wants to achieve something great, then he has to risk something great. Yeah. وأما التجار فيركبون المهالك برا وبحرا ويطرحون أنفسهم وأموالهم فيه والمقاطع شرقا وغربا. So look at these business people that go around to the east and the west to make lots of money. Look how they go through all sorts of difficulties in their travels. In those days, back in those days, these traders used to go from countries to countries, bringing in goods, taking goods, and there's a huge amount of profits to be made by doing that type of trade. He says, look at them, how many hardships they go through, going to east and west, cutting off from their families. يوطنون أنفسهم على أحد الأمرين إما فوت الأرواح وإما حصول الأرباح. They have taken it upon themselves that they will perish themselves, or they will make a lot of profit. They're putting their lives at risk, in other words, to make these huge profits that they make. حتى يحصل لهم بذلك كل ربح عظيم, so that they then end up with these huge profits, ومال جسيم وعرق نفيس, and all of these precious goods and huge amounts of wealth. وأما السوقي الذي قد ضعف قلبه ورق عزمه فلا يكاد يقطع الكلب من علاقته من نفسه وماله. He said, look, in contrast to the person who's like a shopkeeper. In other words, he stays in one place and does his business from one place, like his own shop or his own market or whatever. He's not able to take that risk of traveling to trade. He said, this person, he's unable to make this risky moves. فهو من بيته إلى دكانه طول عمره. He is always going to his shop and going back to his house and going back to his shop. That's how he will live his life. Just doing something he's habituated to, something he's accustomed to, he's not able to take the risks. لا يصل إلى مرتبة شريفة كالملوك. This person will never get to these higher levels. He's giving examples of worldly things to show also, if we then want to have the other worldly high aspirations, we also have to take a risk. We also have to get to that level of tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have to make some sacrifices, ولا إلى ربح عظيم كالتجار المخاطرين. This person will also never make those huge amounts of wealth like those businessmen that were able to take risks. فإن نال في سوقه ربح درهم على بضاعته فذلك له كثير. If he makes 1 dirham, that is for him a big thing. وذلك لتعلق قلبه بشيء معلوم. This person is he wants to do the thing that he is accustomed to. He is not able to take risk. فهذا في الدنيا وأبنائها. So this is the example of the people of the dunya, the people of worldly success. وأما أبناء الآخرة فرأس مالهم هذه الخصلة التي هي التوكل وقطع القلب عن العلائق. As for the people of the akhirah, their capital is this attribute, which is tawakkul, trusting completely in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And cutting off the heart from all attachments. Imam al-Ghazali is trying to take us to the next level. Okay? You've gone through the level of suppressing your desires, staying away from what is haram, what is makruh, what is excessive speech and excessive wasting of our time. Now we have to start getting rid of the heart from all ala'iq, all attachments to the world. All attachments to creation. لما أحكموها وأعطوها حقها لما أحكموها وأعطوها حقها تفرغوا لعبادة الله تعالى. Once they get this khasla, this attribute of tawakkul perfected in their hearts, they will then be free for ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They'll be free from all of those attachments. وتمكنوا من التفرد عن الخلق والصياحة في الأرض. They will then be able to stay away from people, because part of being with people that you don't really benefit from is often to do with rizq. You know, you feel that you need to meet certain people so that you have certain connections. Nowadays in the corporate world, they actually have special things where like you have to what do they call it when you networking meetings, something like that. They don't even, it's just become such a norm that it's just, so you feel that you have to go to these meetings, because otherwise other people will get ahead of you. They'll have those connections, those networks you won't have. So you see how often mixing with people is often to do with lack of tawakkul as well. It's to do with rizq, connection to rizq. I need to know more people, I need to feel more secure in the world. وَالصِّيَاحَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Once you've severed all of these connections to worldly, to creation, you'll also then be free to go, to travel in the world, if you need to. If it's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires of you, at that time and place you'll be able to do it. Like Imam al-Ghazali himself was able to do. If you read his biography, I'm sure people know about his biography. When a time came in his life when he was a professor, one of the leading scholars of his time, even during his own lifetime, and he had a family and children, everything, but a time came when he knew he had to leave everything and go and establish himself in the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was able to do that. He was able to do that. And he went, and for many years he wandered around different masjids, done i'tikaf and done a lot of dhikr and etc. until he eventually came back to struggling and striving and spreading the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he was someone who had that, who was able to take that move when it was required. So that's what he's saying. Now we have to move to that next level of such a trust and faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we're able to do what is required. If it's required for us to take up the sword in our hand, then we must be able to do so. This is not the time or the place for us to take up the sword, but if the time or the place came about tomorrow, we have to be people who are able to take up the sword. وَإِقْتِحَامَ الْفِيَافِ وَاسْتِتَانَ الْجِبَالِ وَالشِّعَابِ. You'll be able to go and live in deserts or mountains if it was required for you. فَصَارُوا أَقْوِيَاءَ الْعِبَادِ وَرِجَالَ الدِّينِ وَأَحْرَارَ النَّاسِ وَمَلُوكَ الْأَرْضِ بِالْحَقِيقَةِ. So these people who then get to this level of complete trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they become from the elite of the worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The strong worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Rijal ad-Din, they become the people of this deen. The people that this deen is carried through every generation. As the Prophet ﷺ said in the Sahih, in every generation there's a group amongst my followers that will be upon the haqq. In every generation, and this has come from several Sahaba, that in every generation there is always people in this ummah that will be upon the truth and will be strong upon the truth. This ummah can never be finished of all righteous people. There will always be a group of those people upon the truth. So you will then become of these people. وَأَحْرَارَ النَّاسِ, you will be from those people who are truly free. And this is the beauty, the person who becomes a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the true and complete sense, he becomes completely free, a completely free man. Why? Because he's no longer enslaved to any of his passions, desires. He's no longer enslaved to the creation. He's no longer enslaved to those people because he sees that they have no power. Yeah? And they become then the true kings of this world. The true kings of this world. As one of the Sufis, he was in front of one of the caliphs. Yeah? One of the Sufis in front of one of the caliphs. And he said to him, I think it was Harun Rashid, and he said to him, he was in front, he's the caliph of the whole world. He said to him, if you had no drink, nothing to drink, no water, and you were severely dying of thirst, and I give you this glass of water, would you give half of your kingdom for this glass of water? And he said, yes. And he said to him, then if once you have drunk the water, you are unable to pass it out. You are unable to pass the water, so it becomes, retained in there. Would you give half of your kingdom to allow to? Which he said, yes. So he said, what's the worth of all of your kingdom? Because it's worth less than a glass of water. So those people of the dunya, they're not true kings. Because they're slaves to so many things. The true king is the one who has freed himself from all of these things, attachments. وَيَسِيرُونَ حَيْثُ يَشَاءُونَ وَيَقْصِدُونَ مِنَ الْأُمُورِ الْنِظَامِ عِلْمًا وَعِبَادَةً مَا يَشَاءُونَ. These people have now become free. They're able to go wherever they want. And they're able to aspire for these high matters. لا عائق لهم ولا حاجز لهم دونهم. They no longer have any obstacles in their way. وكل الأماكن لهم واحد. Every place becomes to them like one place, the same place. وكل الأزمان لهم واحد. All times become the same to them. All times and places become the same to them. وإليه الإشارة بقوله عليه الصلاة والسلام من سره أن يكون أكرم الناس فليتق الله ومن سره أن يكون أقوى الناس فليتوكل على الله ومن سره أن يكون أغنى الناس فليكن بما في يد الله أوثق منه بما في يده. What's the time now?
12:03.
12? Okay, we'll just finish with this hadith. In this hadith the Prophet reported have said, whoever wishes to become the most noble of people, then let him have taqwa of Allah. Why? Inna akramakum atqakum. Indallahi atqakum. The most noble of you with Allah is the most of taqwa. وَمَنْ سَرَهُ أَنْ يَكُونَ أَقْوَى النَّاسِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Whoever wants to be the strongest of people, then let him trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the one who wishes to become the most richest of people, then let him be someone who is more trusting of what is in the hand of Allah than he is of what is in his own hand. more trusting of what is in the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than what is in your own hand. Well, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to understand the truth of taqwa and of tawakkul, and to become people of taqwa and of tawakkul. Jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ahlu. Jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ahlu. Jazallahu anna Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ahlu. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursalin.